Masechet Yoma 43. We're in the middle of Olah. He is giving us a play-by-play of the Pesukim regarding Para Aduma. You see, there's a lot of statements about who does what. Sometimes it talks about El Azar doing it, and then sometimes it says Ish Tahor, sometimes just says he does it. And so we're trying to figure out who is allowed to do each step of the preparation of the Para Aduma. The last thing we mentioned here is that the person, when you take out the animal, you have to bring it. That means you can only bring the Para Aduma. You can't bring another one, his friend, to go along with him. Oh, okay, and so we start with that. V'shachat ota. It says you have to slaughter it. Only it. You can't go, and in the mood to slaughter another animal, make a barbecue. No, Para Aduma, only slaughter that one. Everybody agrees to that. Now, lefanav, lerav shelo yasiach da'ato mimena, lishmuel shehezar shochet ve'elazar ro'eh. So we already spoke about this phrase, v'shachat ota lefanav. So he is going to slaughter it in front of him. It's very strange. What do you mean he in front of him? So we saw there's two opinions. Rav says the Kohen has to do it, and the Elazar has to do the shechita. So the word lefanav means that he has to do it in front of his own face, meaning he has to concentrate on this the whole time he's doing shechita, but it's Elazar that does it. According to Shemuel, he thinks that even the non-Kohen is allowed to do shechita of the Para Aduma, and he learns it from here. Shechat ota, Azar will slaughter it in front of him, in front of Elazar. And so they have each their own interpretations of this phrase. Now, remember this, because depending on who does this first one, that will have an effect on the pronouns in the next phrase. So the next part of it is he takes some of the blood with his finger. So who is doing that? Lishmuel el Azar. Shemuel said that the shechita can be by Azar, and now it says El Azar Kohen. Okay, so the shechita, good, the non-Kohen did it, but now El Azar has to take over. And when we say El Azar, it means the high priest, the deputy high priest, not just any Kohen. Lerav havem mi'ut achar mi'ut, ve'en mi'ut achar mi'ut ela lerabot da'afilu Kohen hejot. According to Rav, the shechita had to be done by El Azar, but now the sprinkling, the taking the blood can be done by any Kohen. How does he learn that? It said El Azar, and then it says El Azar again. Shouldn't that only emphasize, like for sure El Azar? No, because we have another rule that says a limitation after a limitation actually includes something. That's a little counterintuitive. You can think of it like a double negative, because the opposite, or maybe more precisely, you can think of it. Let's say I give a limitation, this doctor only sees patients on Tuesdays. Okay, that's a limitation. It's very, very, very hard to get an appointment. But if I say that rule only applies during the summer, now actually all winter, right, for 10 months, he sees patients every day. So sometimes a limitation after limitation can actually be more inclusive. So that's how Rav reads this El Azar. So now you know what? Any Kohen can do that. Good. Now the next part of it, velakacha kohen ayes ereze ve'ezobushni tolat. Right. So now it says kohen. Which kohen is going to take the three ingredients and dip them, and then throw them into the fire. Who does that? Lishmuel da'afilu bekohen hejot. So according to Shemuel, since he said before. Say Shemuel's opinion was the shechita cannot be done by anyone. Taking the blood only by Elazar, but now throwing in the three ingredients, any Kohen. So he really goes kind of down and up and into the middle. So that's Kohen is now evening it out. Lerav isterich. According to Rav, you're already taking the blood was already any Kohen. So why do you have to say now any Kohen again? I might have thought. It's not the actual para. Fine, they're taking the blood, the burning, that has to be done. But these are three foreign ingredients. I might have thought a non-Kohen can do it, and that's why I need it, even though it's not adding anything new. This is a good example of what Ulah's principle was before. Sometimes a pronoun only continues the same as before. It doesn't change it. See, so according to Rav, it's staying the same. According to Shmuel, this noun is actually changing, updating who can do it. So here you have a summary of all the steps so far, according to Rav and according to Shmuel, but now they're on the same page, right? Because now any Kohen can do both of these. So the next section is V'chibes HaKohen. I can show you the Pesukim. We're in Pasuk, right? So they took it and threw it into the fire, and then that Kohen has to wash his clothes, and he's tameh until the nighttime. So another word that says HaKohen. So let's see what that means. V'chibes HaKohen, begadav HaKohen, bechihuno. Bechihuno is while he's wearing the bigdei kehuna. Now, this doesn't mean he has to wash them while he's wearing them, because it doesn't put himself in the washing machine. It's talking about that the previous steps, all the steps he did before, have to be done while he's wearing bigdei kehuna. Don't think that it's out on Har HaZeitim and there's, it's not in Bet HaMikdash. He could be wearing his workday clothes. No, bechihuno. V'tameh HaKohen ad ha'arev, and another word that says HaKohen. Why do I need that one? Kohen bechiuno lidorot, not only in the first generation of Elazar, but forever, in all generations, they has to be wearing his bigdei kehuna. Hanicha leman damar lidorot bekohen hejot shapir. Okay. Yesterday we saw that whenever you say Elazar, and Elazar has to do it, what does that mean after Elazar dies? Does that mean, there was two opinions, does that mean that it has to be from then on a Kohen Gadol or a Kohen Hejot? So far we've been assuming that Elazar in future generations, because he's deputy, means any Kohen can do it in the future. But what about the opinion that says Kohen Gadol has to do all those things in the future? So if you say regular Kohen, I understand that you have to tell me that he has to do it bigdei kehuna. But if you say, tell me in the future, anything that you told me before that Elazar has to do, like according to Rav Shmuel there, then, and that means the Kohen Gadol, Kohen Gadol ba'enan b'chiyunomi ba'ya. If you tell me a Kohen has to do it, you even have to tell me that has to be done b'bigdei Kohen Gadol, like all the more so. Obviously, it's such a high requirement, so you're going to need him to wear his clothing. Yes, sometimes, even though you could learn it from a Kavachomet, I agree, but the Pasuk tells you anyway, gives you a freebie, makes it easier for you, so you don't have to go and bother and making the Kavachomet. This is a very interesting principle, because sometimes we go out of our way and say, wait, why is that? I could learn it from a Kavachomet, so it's an extra Pasuk, so I learned other things from it. But sometimes it says, all right, it's a little repetitious. You could have figured it out, but that's okay also. All right, so that works either way. Now we get to the next section. V'asaf ish tahor et efed hapara v'hiniach. Let's look at the Pesukim. So now a Kohen is going to gather, after it's all burnt, a Kohen is going to gather the ashes and put it outside the machaneh in the makom tahor. You want to put it in a safe place that it will remain tahor. So who is doing this? Now we have a new phrase, ish tahor. Who can do such a thing? So ish lachshir et hazar. This makes sense. It doesn't say Kohen anymore. So meaning anybody can do it. Tahor lachshir et haisha. Tahor says a woman can do it. Well, I mean, tahor doesn't mean maybe it should be tahora or whatever. I guess it could have just said vasaf tahor. You don't have to say ish tahor. So when you say ish, and that's anyone, any non-Kohen, so tahor is coming to include something else. Who else? Isha. V'niach mi sheyesh bo da'at le'aniach yatzu cheresh shotev v'katan. She'en bahen da'at lehaniach. V'hiniach means you have to place it intentionally. So it has to be done. Someone who can have intention, someone who has mindfulness, and so therefore it cannot be a deaf person, someone who's insane, or a child who cannot have that level of intention. All right, so that's what we learned from this. From this. Now we're going to get to the next step. So far we gathered the ashes and put it in a safe place. Now, if you look at the Pesukim here, where we did all this, and then they're just going to wash again. Then the next section of Pesukim goes into laws about who becomes tameh. And so we're going to skip all that to the next step of when you actually want to use the para aduma ashes. It says v'lakechu latameh me'afar serefat hachatat v'natan alav mayim chayim el keli. So this is interesting. V'lakechu is plural. So they're taking for the person who's tameh from that pile, and then v'natan is singular. and you add water to it. So who is doing this, right? The plural and the singular. It seems to be, the pronouns seem to be going back on the last time we had this phrase, and there was ish tahor. So now you're wondering, right, who we have to figure out who is this v'lakechu referred to. So this is mentioned in a Mishnah in Masechet Para that says, Hakol kesherin lekadesh. Lekadesh means to mix the water and the ashes. Chutz me'cheresh shoteh v'katan. So that would be the same as the gathering, right? Anyone could do it, man or woman, non-kohen, but not cheresh shoteh v'katan. Rabbi Yehuda machshir b'katan uposel b'isha u'ba'androginos. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees, and he says a katan can do it, can do the mixing, but not a woman, or androginos means someone who is unclear of his gender. Andro means is Greek for man. Gunos, like a gynecologist, means woman. He's a man, woman. So because he's not clearly a man, cannot do it. So that's Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. What's the source of this disagreement? Is that pasuk I just showed you? My tamad Rabbanan dichtib v'lakechu latameh me'afar serafat hachatat hanachte pasle lach basifa pasle lach bekidush v'anachte achshiri lach basifa achshiri lach bekidush. So according to Rabbanan, the word v'lakechu down below is a reference to continue. Whoever could have done this. This the asaf ish tahor. So it's the same. This pronoun is simply continuing what you had before, just like above. It can be a woman, but not a child. So to here, the mixing can be a woman, but not a child. So this is a principle of continuing the pronouns. If you wanted to continue, use the singular, the same one person, whoever does it. But instead it says v'lakechu, that's an inclusive word. Ta'afilu katan, de paslila chatam hacha kasher. So it's including a katan, even though he couldn't gather, he can mix. Good. Now isha minale v'natan velo v'natena. But the continuation of that pasuk says v'natan, now in singular. So that's an exclusive word, and that says and doesn't say v'natena. So that means not that a woman cannot do it. That's why the Yehuda says a child can, but a woman cannot do this stage. Hava amina, yeah, that's not. Yeah, kasher. Okay, right. Good. So that's the Yehuda. Now, v'Rabbanan, has Rabbanan explained how come it says plural and singular? If it says singular and singular, hava amina adeshakel had ve'yahev had. I might have thought only one person is allowed to do the first step and one person, but it's not true. Maybe you could do multiple people. It doesn't matter how many people. So that's why it says in plural. It doesn't have to be the same person that does the taking and the placing, right? Let's look at the pasuk. They take from the serefat para and they put water on it. Doesn't have to be the same person that removes some of the ashes and places. It could be two different people. So that's why it can't be singular and singular. It said plural and plural in both places. Then I might have thought I need two people to do each one, and one person can't do it alone. So therefore it says plural and singular to tell me it doesn't matter how many people, it doesn't have to be the same people. But that's all it's saying. But it's continuing the pronouns from before. Don't learn anything new from it. That's Rabbanan. So now that's the next pesukim here. Right? So now you take an ezob. This is another ezob besides the one that you threw into the fire. That one's gone. You take another one and you dip it into the water. And ish tahor has to do this. So now we have a new phrase, right? What kind of person does ish tahor refer to? And he's going to be the one that will sprinkle it on the people. So who is ish tahor? Labanan ish velo isha tahor lachshir takatan. So this phrase is going to switch. Whatever you thought before, now you have to do the opposite. This is an example of what Ola said, that sometimes something implied from a previous verse is now changed by an updated verse. Because otherwise, why say a new noun if you could have just said they do it? Instead, it says ish tahor. So beforehand, according to the Banan, a woman could do the previous steps. So the ish tahor tells me ish, but not a woman. She cannot do the sprinkling. And tahor comes to include the katan. According to the Banan, katan was not able to do it before. Now he is able to do it. So it's switched. And the Yehuda also is going to switch. Ish, ish velo katan. Tahor lachshir ta'isha. The Yehuda is the one that beforehand said that a child can do it and not a woman. So now we change it. Ish velo katan. Now the katan is excluded, and tahor comes to include that a woman can do it. Okay, so according to each one, right? Someone can't. It's just that you keep switching depending on if it has a continuous pronoun, you continue the category before. If it has a new noun, you have a new category, so they have to switch. Okay, good. We're going to ask one question on the Yehuda here. Metibeh, hakol kesherin lehazot, chutz mitumtum v'androginos ve'isha. Everyone can sprinkle except for these people who are either no gender or double gender and a woman. She cannot do it. So that follows the opinion of Rabbanan, right? The katan sheyesh podat isha mesayato mazeh. Katan cannot do it alone, so that also fits Rabbanan. But if you have a katan and a katan can do it. Sorry, right? Katan can do it. So if you have a katan who has that, so the woman can help the child out, right? So a woman can't do it alone, but the child can do it. But the kid might need a little help. So a kid with the woman helping is okay. So that fits the opinion of Rabbanan, but not a Yehuda, right? The Yehuda says not a katan, and yes, a woman in this case. So v'la palig Rabbi Yehuda. So where's Rabbi Yehuda in this braita? It only says one opinion, which sounds like everybody agrees. Would Rabbi Yehuda agree to this? Doesn't say disagrees. Amar Abaye kevan de'amar mor mashma motzi miyad mashma umashma mimela palig. Abaye explains, since Ula said the principle that a mashma, something that is implied, right, a category that's implied, undoes a previous category that's a previous implication, mosimiyad mashma, and here you have a new noun, ish tahor, so that has to undo what we said before, and sometimes it continues. So everyone agrees to this principle, and here it is changing whatever came before. So yes, even though the Yehuda doesn't say anything here, we have to assume that he would in fact disagree because he applies this principle. Okay, very interesting. Now we're almost done with this. Vehiza tahor al tameh, tahor mikelal shehu tameh, limed al tivul yom shekasher bepara. So the next section is, the next pasuk is Viza tahor al tameh. The kohen, whoever's doing it, doesn't have to be a kohen, right? Whoever is sprinkling is going to be the tahor one, and he sprinkles on the person who's tameh on the third day, on the seventh day. Now the question is, why do you have to call this person a tahor? In the previous pasuk, we already called him ish tahor. So just say Viza al tameh, right? I know he's tahor. He was tahor 1 minute ago. What happened? So now you have a doubling. And if you have a doubling, this is kind of like a mi'ut achar mi'ut, right? Tahor after tahor might actually include someone that someone who's not so tahor. What do you mean someone who's not so tahor? What is that person? Tivul yom shekasher bepara. Tivul yom means someone who became tameh on that day. He touched a dead mouse. He went to the mikveh, but he's not fully tahor. He can't, if he's a kohen, he cannot eat terumah until dark. But he's somewhat tahor because he's 90% there. That person can sprinkle the para aduma. And that's what we learned from here. Okay, so this is an amazing thing that we learned, and we know that this was a subject of a huge controversy in the times of the second Bet HaMikdash between the different sectarians. And so here's at least one way that the rabbis derive that even someone who is slightly less than fully tahor can be the one to sprinkle. Good. Amar bi asi. So this is an amazing statement after you saw all that, and you see how many times it switches from one to the other, and how do you apply the pronouns. The truth is that the rabbis are dealing with the real difficulty of all these different phrases, right? Try it yourself at home for homework, right? Go through every one of the nouns and pronouns and see if you could make a consistent, a consistent commentary on what kind of person is allowed to do each step. So you won't be the first to have done that. Ki avuba Rabbi Yochanan v'Resh Lakish bepara. Rabbi Yochanan and Lakish, they sat and they discussed and they analyzed this. And they couldn't they couldn't derive from it only a little bit the amount that a fox brings up from a plowed field. A fox has, walks on his toes and makes a very small footprint. So when they went in and when they dug into this these pesukim, they couldn't come up with even as much as a fox digs into the ground. Elamri mashma mosimi ad mashma or mashma mimela. All they could come up with is what we saw Ula say, which is sometimes pronouns continue what came before, sometimes pronouns undo what happens before, and we're not able to find a 100% consistent methodology that works for all the Pesukim. Okay, really, really fascinating. It's fascinating because usually we only get like the bottom line of how they, not the process. Here we get, a little insight into their own struggles into interpreting these difficult Pesukim. Okay, now we're gonna have another opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. We saw before Rav and Shemuel. Rav says that a Kohen has to do the shechita of para aduma. Shemuel says a non-Kohen can do it also. Who does Rabbi Yochanan agree with? Those are both from Bavel. Rabbi Yochanan is from Eretz Yisrael. So a Tana, a memorizer, quoted a Braita in front of Rabbi Yochanan. And the Braita said all shechitot can be done by a zar, meaning in the Bet HaMikdash anytime, even the one of Kohen Gadol, apparently, on Yom Kippur, except for para aduma. Para aduma, no, it has to be done by a Kohen. This agrees with Rav. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan, puk, taneh lebara. Rabbi Yochanan kicked him out of the Bet Midrash. Get out, right? In other words, I don't agree with that baraita. And so you see Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Shemuel that says a non-Kohen can do para aduma. According to Rabbi Yochanan, there is never any shechita, anytime, anywhere that a zar cannot do. So actually, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with both Rav and Shemuel because each of them said a non-Kohen can do one of them, either para aduma or the para of Yom Kippur. Rabbi Yochanan says a non-Kohen can do all of them. Now, the extent to which Rabbi Yochanan goes against this baraita is quite amazing, and we point out even further. Rabbi Yochanan, lami by the Tana de la Sayet. Not only does Rabbi Yochanan not follow this baraita, he didn't even follow his own teacher. What did his teacher say? Damar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yehosadak. Shechitat para bezar pesula. His teacher said that shechita of para aduma by a non-Kohen is no good. Rabbi Yochanan says, I disagree with my teacher. I say it's okay. We never find that it's a problem. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan was very strong in his opinion in this regard. Now, all the way back to the Mishnah, what happened? We left the Kohen Gadol. He's about to do the vidui on the pod, the second vidui, which is for all the Kohanim. Now, the question is, why does he have to do two viduis? One for his own family, and then for all the Kohanim. Just do one. He's part of the Kohanim. Just do for everybody together. How come the first one, he only said the family. He didn't say and all the Kohanim. And the second one, he does say all the Kohanim. Interesting. Bnei Aaron are called Am Kedoshecha. They're a sub-nation, right? A subgroup within that a holy nation within a holy nation. Tana de Rabbi Ishmael, here's the answer. Very important principle that midat hadin, justice commands that someone who is innocent can come and plead on behalf of someone who is guilty. But someone who's guilty cannot plead on behalf of someone who's guilty. So in other words, first the Kohen Gadol has to take care of himself. I'm sorry for all the sins me and my family did. Once he does vidur, he makes teshuvah, then he's in a position and he can plead for someone else. Very good principle. Take care of your own problems, and then you can go and help other people too. Right? Put your own mask on first. Okay. And now we get to the next Mishnah. Shehato v'kibel b'mizrak et damo. ונותנו למי שהוא ממרס בו על הרובד הרביעי שבהיכל, כדי שלא יקרוש. So the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur goes and does shechita, and he collects the blood. So here, remember those loops that are in the Bet HaMikdash that hold the animal down. So the Kohen Gadol does shechita. Remember, he does only as much as necessary, and then the Kohen Gadol himself has to run around and collect the blood. So that's what he does there, and he gives it to another Kohen who will mix it the whole time. Because if you leave blood out, it will congeal, and it's no good. You got to sprinkle it. You can't congeal it if it's sprinkled. If he mixes it the whole time, so that's this guy's job. He's got to keep mixing it while the Kohen goes and does the ketoret and everything else. He's mixing it the whole time. Where does he stand? He stands on the fourth row. So in the Hechal. Right now, this is not a good picture because he's on the steps. So right now, we're assuming that in the Hechal means in the sanctuary, inside. Right, and the floor is made out of tiles, so he goes to the fourth row of tiles, and it says in the Hechal. The Gemara is going to say that doesn't mean he's in the Hechal. It actually means he's outside the Hechal, even though it says by Hechal. He's outside on the steps, on the fourth step. Okay, but we're going to have to change the Peshat understanding of it, so that it doesn't congeal. Natal machta ve'ala l'rosh hamizbeach. The next thing he has to do is the ketoret. So he takes a shovel and he goes up to on top of the mizbeach. So when he goes up there, remember that there's a separate, right? There's a big fire where you put all the animals. There's a separate fire that they used all year round for the ketoret to have nice clean. Now you don't take the top ones that have fire burning out of them, and you don't take ones that are all on the bottom that are already ashes. You want it to be just right, just in the middle. So he pushes them around, and he gets the coals or ashes that are the embers that are just right, and he puts it into his shovel. And he takes the shovel and leaves it on the step because he's got to go do other things. So he just puts it down on the step there, and the same step that the other Kohen is going to be standing on and mixing. Now we're going to compare how Yom Kippur is different from all other days of the year. On other days, he would go up with a silver shovel and take the embers, and then he would pour it into a golden one. On Yom Kippur, he uses a golden shovel and uses the same shovel to go into the Kodesh, and even in the Kodesh Kodashim. So why? Because the Kohen Gadol is doing everything on Yom Kippur, all the avodot, we don't want him to get too tired. So we're going to let him skip a step. He doesn't have to go and transfer. This makes it easier for him. On every day, since he's transferring, anytime you transfer from one to the other, you always lose some, right? Some falls out, some sticks to the bottom. So he takes 4 kabin. You need 3 kabin to bring in into the Kodesh. So he'll usually takes 4, and then when he transfers, he'll have 3. But today, since he's not transferring, just take 3 to begin with, and he'll enter the Kodesh with 3 kabin. The Bios said disagrees just on the weekday, on the non-Yom Kippur day. Omer bechol yom chote b'shel se'ah. Se'ah is double, which is 6 kav. So sorry, says 4, right? So usually every day is 4. The Bios says no, 6. Okay, and then so usually takes 6 and transfers it and to get 3. So he just wants to have a little more extra. But he agrees on Yom Kippur it's 3 and that's it. Usually every day he brings a heavy shovel. The heavy-duty shovel, but today on Yom Kippur a light shovel because we don't want him to get tired. Every other day it has a short handle, but for Yom Kippur a long handle because it's easier to support his weight if he could tuck the rest of the handle under his shoulder. Adom. On other days, he uses one that is green. Yarok also can mean yellow in olden days. So he used yellow gold, yellow greenish gold. But Yom Kippur, he uses red-colored gold. That shovel is red-colored. Maybe it'll be more symbolized like the blood that he's going to sprinkle there in the Kodesh. Every day of the year, you bring ketoret in the morning and night, and you bring half and half, right? Half in the morning, half at night. Pedas means a half. Or behayom mosif meloch ofnav. But Yom Kippur, besides the half in the morning and half in the afternoon, you bring a whole section for Yom Kippur, a whole a handful for Yom Kippur. Every day has to be finely ground, but today has to be even super finely ground. And so this is great because we say this every day in the Ketoret, right? For the whole year, you have to prepare 368, right? Measures, 365 for each day of the year. And you do half in the morning, half at night, and 3 extra for Yom Kippur. Not that he uses all of them, but he has to grab 1 from 3. So he needs to be 3 at least there. And together, good, now we understand the Ketoret. בכל יום כהנים עולים במזרחו של כבש ויורדים במערבו, והיום כהן גדול עולה באמצע ויורד באמצע. All the rest of the year, when Kohanim go up, they should go up on the east. That means on the right side as you're going up. Since they would go counterclockwise, so they go counterclockwise, and then when they're ready to come down, they turn and they go down on the left side of the kebesh. But the Kohen Gadol, he goes up right in the middle and comes down right in the middle. That shows the prestige of the Kohen Gadol. He doesn't have to go off to the side. This is not only Yom Kippur. Kohen Gadol is special all year round. He can always go up in the middle and come down in the middle. בכל יום כהן גדול מקדש ידיו ורגליו מן הכיור, והיום מן הכיתון של זהב. On every day, the rest of the year, the Kohen Gadol, when he washes his hands and his feet, he goes to the kiyor, the sink, and he washes there. But on Yom Kippur, to make it easier for him, we bring water in a golden flask and we bring it to the Kohen Gadol and we pour it on his hands and feet. This solves the problem that we had some days ago of, according to the Bimeir, who says he undresses first and then he washes his hands and feet. How's he going to do that? It's okay, right? They bring it to him in a golden flask. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Leolam Kohen Gadol Mekadesh Yadav V'Raglav Min HaKiton Shel Zahav. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees again. Not on Yom Kippur, Kohen Gadol special all year round. So all year round, he doesn't have to go and wait in line to use the sink. They bring the water to him. B'chol Yom Hayu Sham Arba'a Marachot V'Yom Hamesh Divrei Rabbi Meir. This is a question of how many pyres were on the top of the Mizbeach. So during the rest of the year, there were 4. Today there are 5. On Yom Kippur there are 5. B'Yosef says B'chol Yom Shalosh V'Yom Arba, every day 3. Today there are 4. B'Yoda Omer B'chol Yom Shetayim V'Yom Shalosh B'Yosef, every day there are 2, and today there are 3. Gemara is going to explain what the difference is between all of these Tanaim. Okay, let's just begin the Gemara a little bit. This is V'Keti B'Chol Adam Lo Yeh Be'Ohel Moed. You mentioned that the Kohen who's mixing has to stand in the 4th row of the Hechal, which seems to mean the 4th row of tiles inside the Hechal, right, indoors. Is that true? But the Pasuk says no one is allowed to be in Ohel Moed, right? Here's the Pasuk. Chol Adam lo yeh b'Ohel Moed be'ba'ol lechaper b'kodesh ad tzeto. While the Kohen is inside doing the Yom Kippur service, no one is allowed to be in Ohel Moed. So that means no one else is allowed to be in the Kodesh. So therefore, Amar Rav Yehuda, Teneh shel Hechal. No, don't say the 4th row in the Hechal, but rather the 4th row leading up to the Hechal. So he's on the 4th step before in front of the Hechal. So that's the this picture, right? He's actually outside the Hechal on the 4th step. Good. Now, Tanura Banan, we have a Braita that elaborates on this. V'chol adam lo yeh ba'ol moed. No one can be in Ohel Moed. Yachol afilu ba'azara. Maybe Ohel Moed means the whole courtyard. No Kohen in the whole courtyard. Well, then that's a problem because where's the guy going to go to mix it? Talmud Lomar be'Ohel Moed. No, only in Ohel Moed. That means in the sanctuary. The courtyard is fine. En le'al ba'ol Moed shebamidbar shilo bet ha'olamim min hayin. I know that applies. Ohel Moed is what you called the inner sanctuary when you were when you had the Mishkan in the desert. How about in Shiloh when it's in one place, or in the Bet HaMikdash? Does that apply also? Talmud Lomad Bakodesh, right? The rest of the pasuk says lechaper Bakodesh ad seto. So the Kohen Gadol is in the Kodesh. No one else can be there with him, but they can be in the courtyard, and that applies in all generations. And the ela bishat haktara bishat matan damin minayin. So I know that's true while he's doing the ketoret. How about while he's sprinkling the blood? Also true. Yes, Talmud Lomad be'bol lechaper. So whatever he's doing lechaper, and that's also lechaper. En li ela b'chnisato b'siato minayin Talmud Lomad ad seto. I only know when he goes in. No one else can be there. But while he's in there, can other people go in? No, ad seto. Okay, these are really pashats. It's kind of obvious, but sometimes the Midrash wants to make sure you have everything clear, even these things that are obvious. Baruch Adonai Olam, amen ve'amen.